All right, now we need to add our displacement, our wave element, here to our MoGraph object. So I'm going to select the cloner, and I'm going to go under MoGraph, Effectors, Formula. And I'm just going to hit Preview so you can see what's happening here. So what's happening right now, and if you look at it from the top view, what's happening is it's bending our cloner object in like a sine wave here, but as it's doing it, it's actually reducing the size as well. And it's really not doing what I want it to do just yet. So we need to tweak our formula settings. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select Formula, and I will go full screen because I think it'll play back a little faster. The first thing I'm seeing with the Formula Effector is, what is it affecting? Okay, let's look at the parameters here. And it's affecting the position, 50 centimeters, but it's also affecting the scale, and I don't want it to affect the scale, so I'm going to turn that off. And now it's just affecting the position. I'm going to increase how far it's waving out. So let's just say 100 centimeters. Okay, so that's giving us a more significant wave, which is good. That's what I want. A more significant wave animation. But it's also much too fast. We want this to feel big, and big things don't move that quickly. So we want it to feel big, and sort of majestic in a way, like a big wave at the beach. So I'm going to go under the Formula Effector here, where it says Effector, and I'm going to open up my Variables tab, and I'm going to set my project time down to, let's say, 0.2. Okay, and that slows it down significantly, and I actually like the way that's looking right there. I'm going to switch back to the quad view just to see what it's doing here. I think it could actually displace a little bit more. It could actually move out a little bit further. Let's just try 150. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. What's happening though is as it displaces that much, you do kind of get more spacing here, which I'm not crazy about. That will close up a little bit when we have the depth of the cubes, but I think it's a little too much, so I'm just going to back it off a little bit. Let's just say 125. Let's compromise there, 125. And that looks pretty good. Now, since we are going to be adding additional effectors, I want to name this something so I can remember it. So I'm going to rename Formula here, just call it Slow Wave. And that's just my slow wave effector, okay? Now the next one I want to do is I want to add a very big displacement wave that's going to sort of move across the screen. That's the one you've kind of seen in those movie previews. I'm going to go back out to my quad view for a second, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my slow wave off for now. And I'm also going to switch to my view camera. So with my perspective view selected, I'm going to switch to view camera because I just want to get sort of an overarching look at this. And you can see my camera animating there. Now, what I want to do is I want to add another displacement effector using the Formula Effector, but I'm going to do something different with it. So I'm going to select Clone, MoGraph, Formula, and see it defaults to doing that same trick again, and I don't want that. So what I want to do here is I'm going to turn off scale for the moment. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the fall off, and I'm going to change the shape to a sphere because I only want it to affect the areas inside the sphere. Let me zoom in here in my top view. So there, if you can look closely there, you can see it's just moving these two planes that are just sitting there inside the sphere's area of influence. It's sphere of influence, if you will. Okay, so I'm going to increase the size of this sphere by quite a lot. I'm going to make it, let's see, 400 by 400 by 400, right? If I look at the displacement here, you can see it's waving out that area. And I'm going to repeat some of the same settings here. So this one I'm going to call this big wave. And I'm going to go under my effector parameters, and again I'm going to slow this project time on this one down to point. I really don't want it to give it a wavy look at all. I just want it to displace it as it's moving, because we're going to keyframe this. So what I want to do is, as you can see in the top view there, as I animate this, it's sort of displacing things out, right? And this is my fall off area. So if you look in the red area, the red circle is where the wave is its most intense, and the yellow circle is the wave where it has no influence. So the space in between is sort of the gradient between 100% intensity and 0% intensity. I'm going to increase that just a little bit and go back to my perspective view. And for this big wave, now I want to increase the displacement quite a bit. So let's just say 300 for the displacement. And that doesn't seem like nearly enough. Well, let's see. It actually looks pretty big there when you look at it that way. So if I select this here and go under my effector parameters, and if I say project time is, okay, if I set my project time to 0, it's basically not really moving at all. And you could basically get this exact same effect just using the random effector if you wanted to, but I don't want to use that. I want to use just a little bit of movement. But it's kind of moving everything backwards in Z space, and I think what I want to do is have it move forward in X space. So I'm going to say negative 300, and that should move everything forward. Yeah, there we go. See, now you see it's kind of creating that bubble forward. Okay, so now I'm going to increase the size of this a little bit by selecting the scale tool and just kind of bumping it up here. Okay, you can see what's going on there in the front. Now I need to animate this across the screen. So I'm going to switch back to my render camera so we can see what's happening here. Okay, now that I have the size of my wave about what I want, I'm going to increase it just a little bit more. Now I want to animate it across the screen. So it basically sort of drags across the screen and displaces things as it's moving. I'm going to select where I've named it Big Wave. I'm going to move it here to off screen. Approximately, I want it, well, no, I don't want to change the size. I want it up here. At frame 0, I'm going to set a keyframe. And then I'm going to move to frame 300 by dragging the time slider. And then I'm going to move my displacement wave here. And I'll hit another keyframe. And you can see now we have a path here. It's kind of shown up. Just moving across the screen. Let's just preview that to see what that looks like. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Let's add a couple other little tricks to that. First of all, let's turn our slow wave back on. And actually, I'm going to turn my grid off. All right. Right about here, I want to stop it because I want to look at this displacement. I like the wave, I like how it's moving, but I think I want to add some rotation here. So let's just say I add 90 degrees here. Now, let's just see what that does. Okay, so now we're seeing a nice wave kind of moving past us here. And it's rotating. Let's add some banking too, just to see what that does. Let's just say 90. Okay, I don't think I want that, but let's just take a look at it. It's a little too tumbly. I really don't like the 90 degrees on it, so let's just make that something subtle. 30 degrees. And let's take a look and see what happens when we add some pitch. Let's just say 120 degrees. I'm not really crazy about the pitch thing. Let's try 60 degrees on that, see if that looks any better. I actually think that's a little better. I think I will increase the banking a little bit though. Let's just say 45 degrees. Okay, so we see this nice wave happening here. Like that, and it's displacing out. I think it could probably be a little bit more dramatic actually. I'm just going to say negative. Well, before I make any changes to, oh no, I suppose I can change the position. I was thinking I was changing the keyframing position. Let's just say 650, just kind of pushes it out a little bit more. If I change the heading to 120, flips it a little bit more. And if I change the banking to 65, just gives it a little bit more movement. Let's take a look at that. I can see things are really starting to tumble here in kind of an interesting way. Now, one other thing that they did in the graphics that I noticed is they also just have this little bit of displacement. They have part of these cubes just sort of displaced naturally anyway using the random effector. So we're just going to add that as well. So we've got our big wave happening the way we want. I think that looks good. I'm going to check one thing here. I'm going to go to my quad view and I'm going to turn on my text layer just to see that it's not interfering with this, because I didn't want the text to be intersected by these cubes. So very quickly, I'm just going to do another preview just to check that. And this text, as I said, is going to animate in. And we're not going to see the text till about frame 160, so it's just going to start to come in around there. Lastly, for this displacement part, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to turn these displacements off again, and I'm going to add one more effector. I'm going to turn my text off again. And I want to look here at the, I guess I want to use my view camera. Let me switch to my view camera here. And I'm going to add one more MoGraph displacement here. One more MoGraph effect. I'm going to add the random effector. And if you're not familiar with the random effector and what it does, first of all, you'll notice that because I didn't have the cloner selected, it wasn't automatically applied to the effectors. Simply grab the random effector, hold down the key, hold down the mouse, and drag it over. And now, lo and behold, everything has been affected in a crazy way. And I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is I want to randomize it only in X. So I'm going to turn Y off and Z off. And now they're just, if we look at it here, just moving forward or backwards from the camera, right? But I don't want to affect the entire process like this. I only want part of it displaced. So again, I'm going to just change my settings a little bit. I'm going to add this thing and say this is 100. And I'm going to go to fall off and I'm going to select box. And now I'm going to just specify an area. Okay, and you see here, if we look, you'll see that because my red box here is the 100% and the yellow box here is the 0%, it sort of fades off. And I actually want to increase this displacement some more. So I'm going to open this up a little bit more, open this up a little bit more. And where is my red handle? The red handle is right at the edge, so it's actually looking pretty good. That's about where I want it. Now, let me just go back to my render. I'm going to need to position this up a little higher. And go back to my render camera. So let's just call this X space random. I like to name things so that I know when I come back to this project at another time, I know what I did. So if I turn these all on and hit a preview, and we're starting to see something pretty cool there. We got the different displacements happening, and you've got the big wave kind of pushing things away, and that's all looking pretty good. All right, now just as a bit of house cleaning here, something I like to do, I'm just going to take these three effectors and I'm going to group them, and I'm going to name it MoGraph effectors, and it's just to kind of keep my project neat. So open it up and you see the big 3 effectors in there. Just kind of collapses them down. Okay.